Amirul ready with the live streaming? Everything? Amirul? Amirul? Okay. All right. Okay. Aisyah.
Dengan izin Puan Koroner, kes dipanggil 65A103-2020 Nora and Quoirin.
Dengan izin Puan, saya TP Ratika bagi pihak pegawai pengendali kes dan bersama dengan saya adalah Tuan Ahmad Tazali, Puan Noralis dan Puan Nur Hafiza. Dan bagi pihak keluarga Nora N, Cik Saktivel, Cik Louis Hasmi dan Cik Lydia Eng. Dan bagi pihak reserve pula saya tak pasti Puan.
Alif.
Cik Alif Benjamin tidak ada dalam ini Puan.
Oh, I thought everybody is ready. Okay. Okay, kita stand down apa ni Aisyah. Aisyah try to contact Mr. Alif. I thought everybody is ready. So sorry.
Apa Puan?
Okay, alright. Aisyah please.
Mana sebentar tadi Puan, pihak-pihak yang sama dan juga bagi pihak resort Cik Ali Benjamin hadir Puan untuk meneruskan inquest dengan saksi inquest ke-37. Ya, Cik Michael Reeves dengan izin Puan untuk meneruskan dalam bahasa Inggeris Puan.
Okay. Please. For your information, we do have our Mr. Sam here, okay, to assist us. Okay, Mr. Michael is our interpreter. If you find some trouble to understand our accent or otherwise, vice versa, so both of us can use our interpreter, Mr. Sam. Okay.
Right.
Okay. Can you?
Yes, the biggest difficulty I have, I think, is with the mask. I have a slight hearing difficulty, and
okay,
is it possible? Yeah.
Because I'm in open court.
Okay.
Okay, I try my best. Okay, I will put my mask. Okay.
That's better. Thank you very much.
Okay. Is it clear?
Yes, that's better.
Okay. Yes. All right. Okay. You may proceed, Atika.
Sumpah dulu macam mana?
Yes. Yeah. Mr. Sam dulu.
You mentioned your partner.
Okay.
I will have the oath now. I, Chu Kaimond, IC number 800516105213, do solemnly, sincerely, and truly declare and affirm that I will interpret all the evidence in this case without fear or favor from British English into Malaysian English and vice versa, as the case may require to the best of my ability.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you,
Sam.
Mr. Sam.
Okay. Aisha, over. Yes.
Hello, good morning, Mr. Michael. Can you hear me?
Hello. Yes, I can, thank you.
All right. I believe you have been provided with the oath with you now.
Yes, I have.
All right.
Would you
Before we
like
begin,
to begin now? Yes.
yes, please do. You have to raise your hand and please proceed.
Okay, thank you. I, Michael John Reeves, do solemnly, sincerely, and truly declare and affirm that the evidence which I shall give in this case shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
All right. Thank you. Could you please tell to the court what is your age now?
Sorry, say it again.
What is your age now? How old are you now, Mr. Michael?
I'm United Kingdom citizen.
I'm asking you, what is your age? How old are you now?
I'm sorry. I am 59 years old.
All right, thank you. Next question is, what is your address? Mind to share with all the parties here? Your address?
My address? Yes, my address in London is 5 Woodbury Drive, Sutton, SM2 5RA.
Okay, what is your occupation and your designation currently?
I am a qualified teacher and my designation is head teacher at Garrett Park School.
How could we address you? Is it a teacher or Mr. Michael you prefer?
Mr. Michael is fine, yes.
All right, thank you. Parties will put the question to you now, right? Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Puan Atika.
Hello, Mr. Reeves. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can, thank you.
I'm the Deputy Public Prosecutor for this case and assisting the court, and I have some questions for you.
Okay.
You said that you are the head teacher of Garrett Park School, right?
Yes.
Is it the equivalent of headmaster?
Yes. Yes.
Do you know when did Nora and Quoirin enrolled in Garrett Park School?
Nora started here in September 2015 at the age of 11.
And how long have she been attending Garrett Park School?
I've been at Garrett Park School since September 2006.
I mean Nora and Quoirin. How long have she been attending the school? Is it until 2019?
Yes, that's right. Yes, until she was last here in July 2019.
Can you tell us how many students are enrolled in Garrett Park School?
At the moment, we have 208 students.
And their range of age?
From 11 to 19.
In the case of Nora Quoirin, how is her class environment? Is it a one-to-one studying with a teacher, or is it in a class with a number of other students?
All of our classes have between 10 and 12 students, and all classes at all times would have one teacher and one teaching assistant who would look after supporting their work and monitoring behaviour and engagement with the work. And also giving assistance to students who didn't understand the work.
And other than these classes, they also attend therapy. Is that correct?
There are different kinds of therapy. Nora had one-to-one occupational therapy, She also had some one-to-one speech and language therapy. And in addition, the whole class together would have received lessons in social and communication skills also from a therapist.
All right. So for her, since she's been there since 2015, every year, does she have the same teacher or does she have different teachers, class teachers every year?
She had a different teacher each year in years 7, 8 and 9. That's the ages of 11, 12 and 13. In 2014, she had a new teacher who would have, had she come back to us, have carried through into the next year. So she'd have had the same teacher for a whole year.
That is for 2019, correct?
Yes. Yes.
As the head teacher, have you ever taught Nora Quoirin personally?
I sometimes taught her if a teacher was absent and I had to cover the lesson. In addition, I saw her at least daily at lunch times and at break times in the playground.
So would you say that you do know Nora and Quoirin personally?
Yes. Yes.
Your school have about 208 students, so you do know each and every one of your students, is it?
Yes, it's something all staff here pride themselves on, is getting to know all of the students we work with.
That is all the question I have for now, Puan. We might have a few more after this one.
Okay.
Yes, of course.
Okay, thank you, Puan Ratika. Okay, Luis Hazmi, over you. Mr. Sakti. Oh, Mr. Sakti. Okay, now.
Yes, Puan. I have some questions, and then Luis may have some other questions as well. Hi, Mr. Michael. This is Sakti.
Hello.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Yes.
Before I start, can you tell the court some background as to the school?
Sorry, that wasn't very clear.
Some background as to the school, whether it is a normal school, special school. Can you hear?
Mr. Michael,
I can hear
you want?
Yeah, it's not very clear. I'm sorry.
Mr. Sam, if you may assist, Mr. Sam.
Mr. Reeves, he's asking about the school. Is it a regular school or is it a special school?
Right, this is a school for special educational needs and disabilities. And our designation is for moderate learning difficulties.
Mr. Michael, you said Nora was enrolled to the school in 2015.
Yes, that's right.
At the age of 11.
Yes.
Yeah. Do you know her? As in, I mean, I know you answered those questions, but I want to start off by that question first. Do you know her personally, being a student at that school?
Yes, I know all of my students well, and I speak to many of them every day. And I certainly saw Nora every day for 4 years.
Mm.
And occasionally I taught her.
Okay. Do you know Nora's condition?
Yes.
Could you tell the court what do you understand by Nora's condition?
Right. The main diagnosis was a condition called microform holoprosencephaly. And that means that the 2 frontal lobes of the brain had not separated fully. Now, that there are different forms of this. Nora had the micro form of the condition. The moderate and severe forms of this condition inevitably result in death, either before birth or shortly afterwards. Nora's form might be described as mild, but it did nevertheless result in significant learning difficulties and physical disability. The only reason we would call it mild is that Nora did not die from it when she was small. In terms of the effects that this had upon her functioning, in terms of her intellect and cognition and learning, Nora presented when she arrived with us at the age of 11 as a child functioning in terms of reading at about the age of 6. At the age of 11, she was reading like a 6-year-old. Her mathematical ability was below the age of 5. Her ability to recall sentences which she'd heard was about the age of 5, and her ability to form sentences was below the age of 7. Over the course of the next 4 years, Nora's reading age increased from 6 to 7. Her spelling increased from 7 to 8. Her maths increased from less than 5 to a little more than 7. And her ability to form sentences moved from under 7 to about 7 years of age. This means that Nora made a limited degree of progress across the 4 years she was with us, although in relation to her ability and in relation to the point at which she started, she made good progress with us and she worked very hard. Other conditions included particularly very poor balance, very poor core strength, poor posture, and all of that meant that physically she found it difficult to take part in some activities, including PE. In the 4 years that I knew Nora, I didn't once see her running in the playground. She was unable to run. She was able to run, but she was fearful of falling, and she did sometimes fall when she tried to run. So she did have a significant physical disability as well, although you may not have seen it. Her ability to move, her ability to balance, her ability to have a straight posture was limited. She also had a significant speech and language delay. As I've said, her sentence formation skills and her recall of sentences she'd heard were again typical of a child much younger than she was. She had a hearing loss in her right ear, which was managed with use of a hearing aid.
Okay. Mr. Michael, how do you assess Nora's coordination or motor skills during her time in the school, from your observation?
Oh, sorry, can you repeat that, please?
Nora's motor skills.
No, sorry, I can't.
Nora's motor skills. Nora's motor skills. In some
She was small.
Yeah.
For her age, she was small, yes. Yes.
I think that I think
Mr. Vale,
whether he is or we are having some technical problem here. Could you please repeat the question, Mr. Sakti?
Puan, can I assist? Because it might be the accent.
Okay.
I think that's the. Mr. Reeves, you're just being asked about Nora's motor skills.
Ah, right. Okay. Yes, I can. Yes. Right. She had significant difficulties with fine motor skills, so with handwriting and particularly things like doing up buttons and zips. She also had difficulty with her gross motor skills, particularly in terms of being able to hold a balance and a posture and to move safely.
And how about speech and language skill?
Her speech and language was significantly delayed. She had the language abilities very roughly of a 7-year-old, although there are very many different areas of language. But broadly speaking, her receptive language, her understanding of what she heard or read, was lower than her expressive language, and she had a receptive language age of about 5 when she arrived with us at the age of 11, and her ability to communicate with others was about the age of a 7-year-old.
And how about social skill in the school?
How about her
social skill?
Mr. Reeves,
No, sorry.
Social skills.
Social skills, right, okay. Nora lacked confidence with others. She was a very quiet student. Her behavior was exemplary. Sometimes I think it's fair to say that she had trouble expressing her feelings to others. Sometimes she would be a very cheerful looking child who was always smiling. That didn't always reflect what was going on inside her. Sometimes if she was worried or if she was upset, she'd sometimes smile anyway. Or if she was concerned about a friend, she might smile anyway. She had a tendency sometimes, I think, to look more cheerful than she really was. In terms of, she had a strong sense of right and wrong. She had a very strong sense of justice. And when other children did something wrong, or when she felt that other children had been treated unfairly, she could sometimes, particularly as she got older, she could sometimes be quite assertive about telling somebody about that. So she did have that sort of social sense, a social sense of how people should treat one another.
And how was the relationship with the other children or the teachers in the school, from your observation?
Sorry, did she?
How was a relationship with the other kids or the other children in the school or teachers?
Right. Because Nora was well behaved and cheerful, she had a good group of friends. She had, I would say, in the class, she had 5 or 6 people that she got on with particularly well. She talked to them. She had positive relationships, and as I said, her she was compassionate, and she empathized with other children when they were upset, and she was very helpful. When she went on a school trip, for example, there were some children in her class who were socially less skilled than she was, and with even more significant disabilities than Nora had, and she could be very helpful to them.
Mr. Michael,
Yes.
Is that school, Garrett Park School, a gated and guarded school?
Is the school Garrett Park School
gated and guarded? Is it gated and guarded?
No, I'm sorry.
The question is whether the school compound is gated and guarded.
Yeah.
Is the school compound enclosed, gated and guarded?
No, we had no gardens in school. All of our surfaces were hard surfaces. We had a playground which was paved with either with slabs or with tarmac. We have no gardens at all.
Sorry to interrupt, Mr. Reeves. I think the question was whether the school compound is confined. Is it fenced?
Yes, it's confined all the way around. Yes. That's not because we're trying to stop the children getting out. It's more because we are an inner city school. We have very vulnerable children, and it's about their safety and not letting other people in. So we have a very tight security to stop strangers coming into the school.
Okay. During Nora's time at the school, has she ever walked out from the school on her own? As in wander off on her own?
We also, when she went out on school trips, she never wandered away either. She was actually very cautious, very aware, and really didn't have the confidence to walk away by herself.
You said she went on a school trip. Can you tell us more about that?
The school trip?
Yes.
Did you? Yes.
Yeah.
The school trip was a residential trip. There were about 40 children and about 15 staff. So one member of staff for every 3 children, and it was 2 nights of camping in the countryside.
And how was Nora coping with the trip? Were you there?
She coped well. Yeah, no, I wasn't. No, I have been on those trips, but not on this particular one. Nora coped very well, and this is where we get some of I get some of my evidence for her being helpful towards other students. Nora did have herself significant disabilities, but there were several students on that trip who had more significant disabilities than Nora had, and Nora was very helpful towards them. She did need, there were some short walks. They were out in the open, and Nora did require assistance with those walks. She wouldn't have been able to do the walks by herself.
Puan, I would like to tender the 2 report. Can someone upload, and then it's a formalities. I'll just ask him to confirm whether it's that report from the school and then tender it.
Okay, Amirul, please share. We go one by one. The first document is enclosure number 132. No. 131. 131. Enclosure number 131. Amirul, you get it?
231.
231, correct. Sorry, 231. This is the first document.
Mr. Michael, can you recognize this document?
Yes, I can see that, yes.
Scroll down slowly, Amirul.
Is this review report from the school? School?
Okay.
I have the document here in front of me as well.
Yeah, Mr.
Okay.
Michael, can you confirm that this report was issued by the school, particularly the occupational therapy annual review report?
That is, yes, that is a document from Garrett Park School, yes.
Can you explain a little bit about this report?
Right, this is support for what I was saying earlier. It demonstrates that Nora had postural control, both standing and seating, which was considerably weaker than those of an average child. The exercise that's done to measure postural strength is the exercise of being able to maintain a prone extension. This means lying down, stretched out as fully as possible. Nora could only manage that for 5 seconds before she became tired when she first arrived with us. She made some progress on that, but 15 seconds, which is where she got to, but before this second test was done, is still way below what one would expect of a normal child. Her balance, similarly, was very weak. The test was to walk a 2-meter line, heel to toe, 1 step at a time, without losing balance. She couldn't do that when she first arrived with us, and this too shows her to be well below the ability of a typical child. Her static balance is remaining still, standing up. Nora could do that when she first arrived with us for only 5 seconds, was able to do that the following year for 20 seconds. So again, there had been progress, but if you consider how long you would reasonably expect a child to be able to stand still, it would normally be much longer than 20 seconds. Midline crossing demonstrates the ability of the body to reach to the opposite side of the body, like this, and retain control. Nora found that very difficult as well. Fine motor skills, as I've said, the occupational therapist here has done a lot of work with Nora on trying to improve the legibility of her handwriting, with holding a pencil correctly. We found that because of her, again, partly because of her postural strength, her weak core muscles, she was exerting excessive grip on the pencil and was unable, therefore, to control it fully. The OT spent some time working on that as well.
Puan, saya mohon tandakan report ini, Puan.
Okay, Aisyah, exhibit EI.
EI 59.
EI 59. The document is marked as AIE, inquest, exhibit inquest, EI 59. Okay.
And Puan, I would like to have another document marked, which is the speech and language therapy.
Okay,
From the
please,
same school.
Amirul. Enclosure 233.
Hi, Mr. Michael. Do you recognize this document?
Yes, this is a speech and language therapy report created by Tijal Mahida, who worked at Garrett Park School for more than 2 years as a speech and language therapist, and she's a qualified speech and language therapist.
Can you briefly explain the contents of this report?
Yes, so the report begins with a general description of Nora's special educational needs and disabilities, which is typical of this kind of report. It then moves on to the interventions that have been carried out. So we have a model of speech and language therapy where the speech and language therapists liaise regularly with class teachers with the aim of, firstly, ensuring that the right interventions are put in place during every lesson, not just during the speech and language sessions, and also to ensure that they actually understand fully what Nora's special educational needs and disability is. Teachers would be involved in the target setting with the speech and language therapist, and the speech and language therapist would also contribute to the Education, Health and Care Plan, the EHCP, which is mentioned at the top of this form. That's a statutory document which the British Department for Education established some time ago to give support to those with particularly pronounced forms of special educational need or disability. There were weekly communication skills lessons delivered by the therapy, and there was also the provision of language and communication strategies for use in class. Some of that would have been provided in individual one-to-one sessions. Now, the difficulties that Nora faced with speech and language were, firstly, that she found it very difficult to explain advanced concepts because she had reduced vocabulary. Her vocabulary was the vocabulary of a much younger child. She also had difficulties retaining information that she'd learned in lessons. So we found that, like many of our students, concepts had to be repeated several times in order for them to be properly embedded. She didn't always react or take on board verbal stimulation. So sometimes visual support was needed in addition to help embed the knowledge. She didn't have a full knowledge of how and why questions. Now, psychologists have determined that children start to develop an ability with how and why questions at the age of 5, and Nora was at that point. She hadn't really fully developed how and why questions. She could answer the what and the where and the who questions clearly and readily, but how and why, any question which required language to explain something, she found much more challenging. She was beginning to be able to do that, but was still very much developing at the 5-year-old level. The complex of same and difference she found difficult as well, because that is essentially a conceptual term. It's not a concrete term, it's a very conceptual term, which Nora found challenging. Her ability to sequence and tell stories was also quite limited, and her ability to describe was that of a child several years below. In terms of her communication and interaction, she was very easily distracted by noise, particularly. One of the difficulties that many of our children have is that they have difficulty with sensory processing. So anything that interrupts or disturbs what they are listening to, they find very difficult to handle. She didn't always follow instructions, it says here, and that wasn't because she was being defiant or disobedient. It was because she didn't understand the language that was being used. She benefits from prompting to attend to the speaker. Now, another good example of that is that every evening for the 4 years she was here, she would wait in our reception area for her taxi to come to go home. Nora would look out of the window and see the taxi pull up outside, but she would always look at the teacher and had to be told, go to the taxi. She wouldn't take that decision herself, even for that short distance, to go off to the taxi without a prompt from an adult. She finds it difficult, it says, to retain large chunks of information, including multi-step instructions. So, for example, if the instruction was go upstairs and find this and bring it back down and give it to, she wouldn't be able to process all of that and remember it. She would need it to be given to her one step at a time. She found it difficult to understand more complex emotions. So, for example, she would understand happiness, she would understand anger, and she would understand fear. She probably wouldn't have understood terms like frustration, which is a slightly more complex emotional term. She did have some strengths. You'll see from the reports that there were strengths, but again, I would say the things she could do were the things that you would expect really quite young children to do. The strengths could not be described as age-appropriate skills. Just to pick out some examples, she could understand the concepts who, what, doing, and where. Those are really very basic concepts. She can sort a group of words into subcategories and can explain why she's put those words into categories. This again would be something that quite young children start to do at the age of 5 or 6. She's able to follow and give simple instructions to a peer in a highly structured activity. In other words, with close supervision from an adult, she can perform this task of following and giving instructions. And structured would mean, again, that she would be tending to be given those instructions one step at a time, rather than a combined number of instructions all in one sentence. In terms of her strengths on communication and interaction, she can take turns. She could initiate conversation by saying good morning. She did have friendships, as I've said. She can generate a limited range of social questions, like what do you do at the weekend? Those are the sorts of questions that we tend to teach as almost as scripts for children to start conversations. I wouldn't say that that's because she would typically say, what do you do in the morning? What do you do at the weekend? She might have required prompts over a period of time before she started to say that naturally. She could share her ideas and thoughts at a basic level. She could demonstrate whole body listening, being quite quiet, attending to the speaker, looking in the right direction, but it says here, with a moderate level of adult support. She wouldn't have done that automatically or naturally at this age. And she's also been able to describe emotions We use a system called zones of regulation, where we rank feelings as being at certain levels. Nora was able to describe that, so that she could to a degree monitor her own feelings. Being able to communicate those feelings is another step on, which Nora hadn't really got to even when she was last here. The next thing that the speech and language therapists and indeed the occupational therapists would do would be to set targets for the year ahead prior to the next statutory review of the government education, health and care plan. So within the next year, the therapist wanted Nora to be able to answer how and why questions related to her everyday experiences, all from a picture or storybook. As I've said, the ability to answer how and why questions would normally begin at about the age of 5. The therapist wanted Nora to be able to identify and use more complex emotion words like envy and irritated. Those clearly are much more complex terms and concepts indeed than anger or sadness or happiness. And that would be, they would be the phase 2 levels, which would be equivalent to the age of 8 and 9. So that was the target in front of us. Quite an ambitious target, I would say, for to move from a developing to an 8 or 9 year level. This was done when Nora was 12 and a half, I believe. I beg your pardon, when she was 18, when she was 14.
Thank you, Mr. Micah. Puan, pohon untuk ditandakan laporan ini.
Aisyah. EI 60. Okay.
Puan, I don't have any further question, but I believe Louise has some questions.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you,
Over.
Mr. Michael. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Puan. Mr. Reeves, you've told us a little about Garrett Park School, including the fact that it caters to children with disabilities and with special needs.
Yes.
Within that, there's a range of abilities, as I understand it. So not every child will have the same disability or be operating at the same level.
That's correct, yes.
And could you just give us some idea as to the range of students that the school has? The
challenge with this description, which we need to bear in mind at the start, is firstly that our students have what we often call spiky profiles. So, for example, we have a child with a life-limiting condition who is in a wheelchair and very severely physically disabled, who nevertheless cognitively is functioning towards the top end of our ability range. Conversely, we have students who are physically really quite able, but whose learning is considerably lower than most of our children. Nora, in terms of her physical presentation, was one of the most vulnerable children in the school, simply because of her poor balance and her lack of physical strength. In terms of her cognitive ability, I would place her in the bottom third of our school, given that she had, it's a crude measurement, but given the idea that she's functioning linguistically and in terms of reading, spelling and numeracy at around about the year 7 level, that places her in the bottom third of our ability range. We have some students, for example, with quite pronounced autism, who have age-appropriate reading, spelling, and maths. Some who would outperform. However, their social skills are so limited, they wouldn't be able to function there. So taking all of that into account, I would say that in terms of her physical vulnerability and in terms of her cognitive functioning, Nora was in the bottom third of our ability range.
And to an outsider, perhaps looking in at Nora, would it be obvious that she had a disability?
Looking at Nora from a distance, you would say that she was, and if you knew her age, you would say that she was much smaller than average. You wouldn't immediately from a distance say that she had a disability. However, when you got closer, when you started engaging a conversation with Nora, and particularly when you saw her engaging in physical activities, if you saw her writing, you would certainly say, yes, that she had a learning disability.
And if you saw her moving, would it be obvious that she had a disability?
Yes. Nora's gait was what I would describe as quite fragile. And you could tell from a distance that if you saw her moving, that her balance was very poor.
You've given us a very detailed insight into Nora at the time that she was at the school. Are you able to help us with what the expectations would have been for Nora in terms of, would she have been independent, for instance, as she got older and as she progressed into adulthood?
I would have hoped that Nora would have gone to college and she might have found a job, but they would be a college placement and work which would have been under a significant level of supervision. So there are work placements in the UK where people with disabilities can work, but I wouldn't have thought that Nora would have been able to get on a bus and go off to work independently. Certainly not shortly after leaving. It might have been something that developed over the years after she left us, but I wouldn't envisage that by the time she left us, she would have been ready for that. The other thing I wouldn't have expected her to do in the short term, for example, would be to be living on her own. I think she would have struggled firstly with things like arranging money, finances. She would have struggled with communicating with community resources, and she would have needed a considerable degree of support and mediation in engaging in a community.
So just considering, for example, if she needed to go to the supermarket, is that something she could have done independently?
It's not something that she was ever able to do when she was with us, and I think going to the supermarket is something she could have done, but she would have needed support in the supermarket to manage. In particular, she would have become in a supermarket, getting to a supermarket, going around the supermarket and coming home again. She would have been extremely exhausted by the end of that. And also, I think her social skills, her speech and language skills, and her money management skills would have been below the level at which she could do that fully independently.
And in terms of life expectancy, did her condition affect her life expectancy?
Not that I'm aware of, no. No.
Just dealing in a little bit more detail with the trip that Nora went on. As I understand it, it was about 2 months before her journey out to Malaysia.
Yes, that's right.
And it was a trip just south of London.
Yes.
Can you just explain a little bit more about what the scenario is? Where did the children go?
The children went to a campsite in the Sussex countryside, and there were about 40 children, all of them of about Nora's age. Again, right across the ability range. So it's an opportunity that we give to all students, not just to those who are able to do it. And they camped out for, I believe, 2 nights in tents. And they shared a tent with either one other student or 2 other students, depending on the size of the tent. We had staff, that the staff tents were lined up as a sort of barrier between our group of students and the campsite at large. And there was always one member of staff awake, so that they were keeping a very careful level of supervision on all of the students. Nora on that trip shared a tent with another student. They got on very well. Nora's social skills, in terms of her ability to understand and empathize with others, were very strong. There was a short amount of walking, but that walking was heavily supervised by staff. It was on flat ground, and it was on open paths and trails. And Nora managed that well with assistance when she got to more difficult places. So there would have been, in each group of 6 on that short walk, there would have been 2 adults, and the 2 adults and other students would have helped Nora where things were slightly more difficult. But as I say, the whole route was level, and it didn't involve going through any dense vegetation or anything like that. Nora on that trip demonstrated her care for others, her ability to help. On a couple of occasions, she volunteered to take a less able student to the toilet, although the toilet block was always within eye contact of the staff, so the staff always knew where she was. She was never allowed to go off on her own, and nor did she ever want to.
And during that trip, did anybody comment on Nora being perhaps confused or disorientated away from home?
No, it's something that we work hard on. The trip is actually in preparation with the students for more than a year ahead. So it's something that we build up to very, very slowly. Nora's class of students, who were all included in the trip, had been together for 4 years. So they all knew one another very well and were very comfortable. Nora's tutor was also on the trip, and a number of other people, including the lead speech and language therapist, were on the trip as well. So she was with a lot of people she knew and had been very, very thoroughly prepared for it. So no, and she also had a clear sense of how long she was going to be there. So she wasn't worried in that sense. No, in fact, very few of our students are. It very rarely happens that a student is so unsettled, for example, that they ask to come home. So no, that wasn't the case.
And we know that Nora had some problems with bedwetting. Did that present a problem at all on the trip?
No.
In terms of Nora's abilities, just relating it now to the circumstances as they were in Malaysia, one possible theory, Mr. Reeves, is that Nora got outside by exiting through a window that was roughly waist height of an adult. From what you know of Nora, would she have been capable of doing that?
No, absolutely not. Nora was obviously much shorter than an average adult. So waist high for an adult would be getting on for chest height for Nora, and I just can't imagine her having either the skill or the balance or the strength to climb over something like that. No, it's just highly unlikely.
You've said that you never saw Nora run. You also said in evidence that she was quite fearful of falling.
Yes.
Was she a child that was quite conscious of her own disability?
Yes, one of the things that we work quite hard on at Garrett Park School is getting children to understand, often understand their own diagnoses. If a child has autism, we will explain to them what autism is and what it means and what impact it's likely to have on them, and therefore the methods they can use to adapt and adjust to life situations. So yes, we do a lot of that, and all of the students at Garrett Park are aware that both they and others who are learning with them find learning a struggle. We work on that. We work on that a lot, and it's something we're very open about.
And so, knowing again what you know of Nora, if she had found herself out in the dark in a strange country, how do you think she would have reacted?
I think in a foreign country, in the dark, she would have been frightened. I think the most likely response she would have had would have been to close in on herself. I would envisage her shouting for her parents. I would have expected her to have closed up and have stayed still in wherever she was.
And again, knowing what you know of her abilities physically, how would she have coped with walking over, for instance, stones, roots, branches, that kind of terrain?
She would have found it exceptionally difficult. Even for a short distance, it would have been very difficult indeed.
In terms of her abilities to perhaps climb or clamber over broken fencing, how would you expect her to cope with something like that?
The idea of Nora climbing over fencing is unimaginable. I simply would not believe that she would do that.
If there was some broken fencing at a lower level, could she have clambered over uneven ground?
She might have climbed over something that was a foot or so high, but no higher than that. I also think that the idea, Nora had the ability to know what fences were for. She had respect for other people's space. She was quite rule bound. As I said earlier, she had a very clear sense of right and wrong, and climbing over people's fences wasn't something she'd do at all.
So she was quite rule-bound and obedient to that extent?
Yes, yes.
Was she excitable? Was she adventurous?
Not adventurous. The word that I would have used, and she wasn't, I wouldn't say she was excitable. She had a sense of humour, and she would sometimes, well, she would very often smile and laugh and giggle. But I wouldn't extend that into the idea of seeking excitement or seeking thrills or anything like that.
Mr. Reeves, thank you very much. Please wait there. There may be some other questions for you.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, Luis. Okay, Mr. Michael, I have some question for you. I need you to see this blank. Where is, okay. I'm going to draw some diagram, Mr. Michael. and I need your assistant. Okay. We go one by one, all right? Hold on,
Okay.
this is that. Okay. Nora started her education at your school in September 2015. Am I right?
Yes, that's right.
Okay, September 2015. Then she left the school in July 2019. Okay, 2019. Yes. And we have what? We have 2016. We have 2017. And we have 2018 here. Sorry, I have to take some time.
Okay.
Okay, 2016. '17. And 18. All right. So when she came over to the school for enrollment in September 2015, what was the assessment, the first impression that the school got when the first time you sing, Nora? Your first assessment, I mean the school assessment over Nora in September 2015.
Right, the assessment that we made, we would actually have done some assessment. We would have looked at the assessment that primary school had before she came to us. The other point to make is that there had been a long educational history for Nora in primary school, so we used a lot of that data. I can say that she was very small. She had a reading age of 6 years and 5 months. She had a maths age of 4 years and 10 months. And she had an expressive language age of 5.
Okay. When you said that she had poor balance, poor posture, difficult to take part in some activities, are you referring to her condition in September 2015?
Right. She was able to walk around. She was able to get from one classroom to another classroom.
Okay.
She was able to take part in a fairly static and still way in PE lessons, and she was able to do the basic functions in our cooking lessons. Nevertheless, out on the playground, mixing with other people, I would still say that at that age, and as she was right the way through school, she was very physically vulnerable.
So based on your assessment, what actually programs that you suggested to the parent for Nora undertaking? To undertake?
The programs in school.
Yes. The
Right.
first time when he came to school.
Yeah,
Upon your
okay.
assessment. Okay.
Yeah, we are a school which caters solely for children with special educational needs and disabilities, and therefore our curriculum is very different from the curriculum you would find in a mainstream school. Most of our subject content is primary school based. We have the same subjects as a mainstream school has, but at a much lower level. We also put in place occupational therapy on a one-to-one basis to develop Nora's fine motor skills, especially with writing, her posture and her balance. We put in speech and language therapy in order to develop her receptive and expressive language, her vocabulary, her ability to answer questions beginning with who, what, where and why and how, and also to develop her understanding of the language of others. Sorry, I have no sound.
Can you hear me now?
No.
Can you hear me now? No?
Puan, you're very soft, Puan. Very, very soft.
Okay, can you hear me?
Very, very slight. Not very good.
Okay, how about now?
That's better. Yes, that's good.
That's better. All right. Okay. Do you mean that there were two main programs undertaken by Nora, which are OT, occupational therapy, and the second one, speech therapy? All right. That's the two main programs. So how often? Pardon?
In addition to a full curriculum in which speech, we monitor her speech and language development in all of her other lessons as well.
All right.
So it's a school-wide program.
Okay. Now, how often your school did an assessment over Nora? How often? Is it every year or twice a year?
The occupational therapy and speech therapy assessments would be done yearly in order to prepare for the annual review of the Education, Health and Care Plan. In addition, maths ages, reading ages and spelling ages are also done every year.
Okay, right. Now, you said that in September 2015, I mean in 2015, she had this problem, poor balance, poor posture, difficult to take part in some activity, and she were given this OT, speech therapy, and other curriculum. And how about in 2016? Was there any development that you can see over Nora?
Any development, did you say?
Yes. Yes.
Well, across the years, by 2016, the occupational therapist, sorry, by 2018, the occupational therapist had said.
Can we focus on in 2016, Mr.
Okay,
Michael
right.
first? Okay, we go one by one. All right. Thank you.
Okay, right. The spelling and reading and maths developed into 2016.
Mm-hmm.
Now that, and this actually is the same every year after, with one exception. The progress was, in each case, was less than a year. So Nora is a year older. The progress is less than a year in between the tests.
Okay.
So that is fairly typical of our students.
Mm-hmm.
The occupational therapy report that we were looking at was rather later than 2016. There were reports earlier than that, but I don't have them in front of me at the moment.
Maybe you can give us or share us the general idea about that report prepared in 2016. I just want to know whether there was any development or not.
Yeah, the development in terms of posture and in terms of core strength and in terms of balance would not have been great. It would have been very small progress.
Smooth progress, okay.
Yes.
What do you mean with smooth progress? Can you explain a little bit further?
Right. The important, I think that the key...
Sorry to interrupt. I think Mr. Reeves said small progress rather than smooth.
Small progress, smooth
yes,
progress.
small
Progress. Okay, small.
Yes.
Okay. All right.
The important point I think to make here is that across Nora's time with us, we would, and as I said with our students in general, we don't expect our students at Garrett Park School to be fixed, to be cured. What we aim to do is to get the best out of them that we possibly can in their circumstances. We were not expecting Nora, when she left Garrett Park School, to have good balance or core strength or good posture. We were simply aiming for that, firstly, not to get any worse than it was, and B, for the gap between her and normal development to be as small as possible. So all of the progress across 15, 16 was small in all of those areas.
But there was still a progress.
Yes, slightly.
Okay.
But again, nothing like the progress that an average child.
It was not obvious. It was not obvious.
Right.
Yes.
Yes,
how
exactly. Yes.
All right.
A clinician.
So how about,
a clinician could see the difference, but other people wouldn't have done. Yes.
Okay. So how about 2017?
Right. In 2017, the situation was very similar to 2016. Again, small progress in all of those areas.
Anything else?
No, I think that's
the same definition that goes with the small progress.
Yes, that's right. Yes.
All right. Okay. Now, how about 2018?
Right. In 2018, there was small progress in all of those areas except for spelling. Nora's spelling in that year went backwards slightly. She got a lower score than in the year before.
Okay, so about that's all? Is it that's all for 2018?
Yes, all again, each year, quite small progress, yes.
Okay, so the small progress, is it the same definition when you explain small progress in 2016 and 2017? The same thing
Yes.
happened in 2018? Not
Yes.
even a greater progress with regard to OT?
What I would say is that in terms of her reading, spelling and math scores, Nora made good progress in relation to her starting point and in relation to her special educational needs and disabilities. If you took all of the children in the United Kingdom who started off in September 2015 at Nora's level, Nora did better than lots of them. She made slightly better than expected progress, but very, very important to bear in mind that's good progress with those disabilities and from that low starting point. That's the key thing. So in 2018, Nora went backwards a little bit in spelling. In 2019, again, we had small progress and the spelling had recovered. So at that point, Nora's spelling had gone up to 7 years and 11 months. So across time, Nora's reading ability in those 4 years went up only by 1 year.
Which is in 2019.
From 2015 to 2019, her reading went up by 1 year. Her spelling age went up by less than 1 year.
Okay.
Her maths age went up by 2 years and 8 months. And her sentence formation moved up from being off the scale at the start of her time with us to the age of 7 in 2019. So overall, Nora is making, in most of those areas, in the literacy, certainly, she's making about 3 months of progress each of the years she was here. In maths, she made about 8 months of progress in each of the years she was here. What has happened is that by 2019, Nora's reading and her maths would have become what we might describe as functional. In other words, she had the basic skills, the very basic skills that you would typically need in day-to-day life, but she wouldn't have been able enough, as I said earlier, she wouldn't have been able enough independently to go off and manage money or spend money. And nor would she necessarily, even though she could decode words at the level of a 7-year-old, her understanding of what she'd read would not always be as high as that.
Okay, that was progress with regard to the program undertaken by Nora. Now, my concern is about her social behavior at school. Okay, if you may share with us your experience, your personal experience, or any information that you gathered from other teachers about Nora's social behavior. We go one by one. We start in September 2015. If anything you can share with us.
In 2015, Nora was extremely timid. Extremely lacking in self-confidence. She didn't voluntarily communicate with others, particularly with others she knew less well. Her literacy and numeracy were at a very basic level. Her social skills were likewise. She had friends. Generally, it's fair to say that she was one of those young people who had one or two close friends rather than being a real sort of social being. She had one or two close friends, and she had in classes and outside class, she'd have had very quiet one-to-one conversations with those people rather than sharing her communication with a wide range of people.
Okay. Okay, so how about, because before this, you said that she understands anger, she understands fear. So how about this kind of understanding in September, in 2015? Is there any,
Again,
was there any incident that you may describe with regard to these two, anger and fear?
no, in say an English lesson where they're reading a story, she would be able to identify when a character in a story was showing anger or fear or happiness.
Oh, that's the only incident which relate to the program in class itself.
She would have been able to identify when her friends were angry or sad as well. Yes.
Okay. Is there any incident when you or the other teacher experienced that she had some anger to something? It's not about her reaction to the subject in the class or any other matter rather than in class itself.
No.
No. All right.
Did you use the word envy?
And it's
Sorry,
not envy, anger.
Anger. No, Nora.
Yes.
Nora herself was never angry. I never saw her angry at all.
Never angry. All right. All right.
No.
All right. So how about 2016? Is it the same explanation with regard to anger and fear?
Yes. Again, it's really about the it's about how abstract things are. So feelings of anger and fear and sadness and happiness are things which are easy to interpret and easy to explain and fairly easy to define. Words like envy and frustration are much more difficult. And I think it's reasonable to say that Nora, by the end of her time with us, was only really just beginning to understand those more complex terms.
The same thing happened in 2017, 18, and 2019, Mr. Michael?
Yes, yes. Again, as with the other areas, all of these things, she demonstrated relatively slow progress. However, by the time we get to 2018, when I did teach the occasional lesson in maths particularly, I felt that Nora had really developed. She developed something of a sense of humour. She was slightly more confident with a slightly larger group of peers. So it was no longer just one or two people. She would speak on a one-to-one basis, but she would speak to 4 or 5 different students in her class and was a little more confident in smaller groups. I still wouldn't say that her social skills, I wouldn't describe them as her being ready for the world at that point.
All right. Okay, I do not know whether you know or not any answer if I ask you about her eating habit, toilet habit. Do you know anything that you can share with us?
Nora was able to eat her own meals without any difficulty. And her toileting during the school day, she managed completely independently.
She went to the toilet herself?
Yes. Yes.
That's why you said that the same thing you said when she joined the trip, she went to the toilet herself,
Yes, she did.
but
Yes.
under the teacher's supervision. Okay.
Well,
All right.
the teachers might have been 20 yards away.
Okay.
There was a toilet block on the edge of the campsite, which she would have walked to by herself, under the watch of a teacher.
Okay, understand. Thank you, Mr. Michael. Okay, Puan Atika, anything to add? Amirul boleh save.
Mr. Reeves.
Hello.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Yes.
Have you ever observed Nora with her family?
The only times I saw Nora with Mr. and Mrs. Quoirin would have been at parents' evenings.
Sorry, can you repeat that again?
I would have seen Nora with her family at parent carer consultation evenings, which we held every term after school.
Right. The reports that we were referring to just now, Mr. Reeves, they were not made by you. Is that correct?
Not by me personally, no. One was made by the speech and language therapist, and the other was made by the occupational therapist.
So, can we agree that the respective therapists would know better about Nora's capability than you?
Yes, I am simply referring on, based upon my knowledge of the work they do, the conclusions they came to about Nora. I regard this as I'm interpreting it, interpreting the documents for the court. Yes.
When do you make this report? Because the report is, I see one from 2017 and the other one from 2018. Is it made at the end of the year, of each year?
The 2017 report was completed in February 2017, which was about halfway through the academic year. Our academic year runs from September to July.
All right.
The speech and language therapy report was done the following year, for the following year annual review, and that was completed in December 2018.
So there was none made in the year 2019?
No, the annual review is each academic year. So the academic year 2018 to 2019 is covered by the report written in December 2018.
All right, all right. 1 second, please. That's all from me, Puan, Koroner.
Okay, Mr. Alif. I forgot about you, Mr. Alif.
No worries, Puan. Hi, Mr. Reeves. My name is Benjamin. I am the lawyer representing the resort wherein Nora went missing. I'm just going to ask a few questions based on your testimony earlier, just to confirm a few things. Before you were head teacher, what was your role in the school?
Right, I joined the school initially in 2006 as an assistant head teacher, and my responsibility at that point was for teaching, learning and assessment. In 2002, 2014, I became deputy head teacher with broadly the same responsibilities. And then I became head teacher in September 2017. During my time as an assistant head teacher and as a deputy head teacher, I also served as the school's safeguarding and child protection lead.
Right. And prior to you being head teacher, the previous head teacher was Miss Irene Parks, is that correct?
Yes, that's right.
Right, and that's the name that is stated in the annual review that we were referred to earlier. I think that was,
right.
Yeah,
yes.
yeah, I think that was
in annual reviews prior to September 2017, the name would be Irene Parks.
Right,
Yes.
right. I just wanted to check on that. And in respect of what you have testified earlier, you have earlier answered to the deputy public prosecutor that you are merely interpreting the reports that were prepared by the individual therapists or teachers, correct?
I was asked to explain what was in the reports that were produced by others, and that is what I did. Yes.
Right. I accept that. And you were never part of the assessment process, right, which led to this report?
No, and nor would it be normal for any head teacher to take a direct part in those kinds of assessments.
Right. And earlier you also said that your interaction with Nora was limited to on occasions where you had to become the substitute teacher, for lack of a better term, and also you assessed or you were able to view her during lunch period at the cafeteria. Is that correct?
I saw her at least 3 times every day, and I spoke to her frequently, and I observed her behaviour frequently. And yes, on many occasions, I also went into the class with her.
Right. How many times, as an estimate?
Probably
since she joined the school.
Up to 20, 25 times every year.
Right. Right. Okay. And let me just quickly go through my notes. Yeah, and you also said that the reports were prepared on an annual basis, correct?
Yes.
Is it possible, I don't know whether the coroner would agree with me, but for you to provide us all the reports for Nora and just to assist the court to assess her behavior and her progress, because I believe that was something that the coroner was quite interested in, to see her annual progress. I don't know whether that's something that Nora's family would have any objection to, but I believe it might assist this court in coming to some sort of a conclusion.
If requested by the coroner, yes, I would happily hand those reports over. Yes.
Yeah, and that. Yeah.
Okay, proceed, Mr. Alif.
Yeah. Sorry, just let me. Okay, that is all. That is all. Thank you, Mr. Lucius.
All right.
Thank you.
So, Ms. Louise Sensakti, how about your response to the request made by Mr. Alif?
Obviously, we can't take instructions at the moment, given the limitations of the Zoom, but I can't imagine that we would have any objection to that. I think it could only assist us to present a full picture of Nora. So if Mr. Reeves is happy to assist us in that regard, I can't imagine that we would have any objections to that. I think we'd welcome it.
Okay.
My suggestion would be that we actually look at the reviews of the Education, Health and Care Plan as well. I think that's an even more key document than the reports you've seen so far.
Okay, in that situation, we still need Mr. Michael on list, okay, till the document be submitted to us. Okay, so
yes, okay.
When we are going to have that document?
I could have that. It's now, is it now 4 o'clock in Malaysia?
Yeah, 4 o'clock. Yes.
I can only. I don't know what's the latest time I could send them today.
Okay, are you ready if we can proceed by, is it tomorrow? Is it okay for the rest?
Yes,
Others?
I can certainly have
How
those
about,
with you.
my concern is about the council.
Yeah, I certainly have other obligations tomorrow. See Mr. Sakti.
Yeah, Puan, I can't. Thursday and Friday, I can't. I have other online hearing. Puan. Maybe
Oh, okay.
Monday. Yeah, Monday is already scheduled. If Puan can start with it. Yeah, that's right.
Okay, all right. How about Monday? Puan Atika, how about Monday? Monday,
2 o'clock.
Monday, I believe would be a better choice one.
okay, at 2. Just to tender the rest of document, the rest of the reports. All right?
Right,
Is it
and
okay
do
for
you
you, Mr.
require?
Michael?
That's okay. Yes.
All right.
Do you
So-
require my presence on Monday also?
Again, I can't get you.
Do you require my presence on Monday
Yes.
also?
We
Yes,
need to
okay.
tender the document through you, Mr. Michael.
I'll send the documents well before then.
Yes. Yes, it's
Tomorrow.
better. Tomorrow,
Yes, that's fine.
not tomorrow. You can prepare the document and send it tomorrow to the council. Okay, to Miss Louise,
Fine.
and your presence is required on Monday at 2 p.m.
Okay, good.
All right. Okay, is there anything else, Puan Atika? No.
No, that's all from me.
Miss Louise?
Nothing for me, thank you, Puan.
Sakti?
No point.
All right. Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Michael. See you on Monday.
On Monday, yes, thank you.
Alright. Okay. Alright. Saksi dilepaskan sementara. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Yang lain tunggu dulu. Mr. Sam may leave. Mr. Michael pun may leave. You may leave, Mr. Michael. Alright. Okay. Okay. Now we are